So I'm ready to make my buttonholes. And I made my buttonhole, I used the memory function on my machine to make a buttonhole that's about a ½ inch long, maybe a little bit longer than that. And then you can see that my bungee cord feeds in and out of this easily. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the buttonholes on my actual flaps. And I've marked where I want them to start and stop, top and bottom. You're going to sew across here, so you want to make sure that your buttonhole is at least about a ½ inch away from where you folded it over. I folded this and pressed it so that I knew where that was going to be. This one over here, I think I've marked a little too close. So I'm going to go ahead and stick it in my machine and line it up. And I don't think I'm going to do it that way. I think I'm going to turn it around. I like to get the bulk of it away from underneath the foot. It works out better that way. And here we go. For those of you who have just a straight stitch machine, this is one reason why you can't just have that. If you ever want to make buttonholes, you have to have a machine that zigzags. So this is quite a little splurge for me to get this Janome 15,000 as a wonderful embroidery machine, but I'm having some fun with that also. Make some more NCW so I can make the payments on it. Alright, now I'm ready to put in my bottom part of the magnetic snap, and I folded this in, and one of the things that I am kind of picky about is I want to make sure that this part right here doesn't stick out to the side of my flap. To me, I think that's a mark that things weren't going quite so well. So looks pretty good, and I also don't like to put my snap way down, so I think you can hold more stuff if you put it up at about between 2 inches and 1 3/4 inches. So I'm kind of marking the center here with my pen, and I'll use my ruler to try to figure out how high to place it. The mark that I made was just a little bit over, well, it was about, yeah, it was just at 2 inches, but I think I might raise it up a ½ inch to be 1 3/4. So it would be right here. This is the center, and then I'll have to mark where my prongs go through and make that hole. I haven't put my interfacing, my Bosal interform in here yet, because I'm going to put that magnetic snap part in there before I put this in, because once I put this in and I press it, that's it, man. It is stuck together, because remember, this is two-sided fusible. So I'm going to do that now. Got it done. Think it's going to be okay. It's a nice strong magnet. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this piece of Bosal down so that it fits between the space between my flaps, and then it's just short of going in to here, because I have bulk right here. I have, you know, the extra seam part there, so I need to trim this and get it in there. I kind of have to wrestle it in, but that's okay. Let me get my scissors. And I'll go ahead and trim this bottom part off. And it looks like I need to maybe cut maybe about a ½ inch off the side. so that it fits right within those two lines that I ironed in place. And I don't really want a whole lot of bulk there. That looks pretty good, but I think I might trim off just a little bit more from this end. As you can see, I'm not using a rotary cutter or anything like that. I'm just kind of doing it by the seat of my pants, which is the way I do most of my things. Okay, so when I made when I put together the inside and the outside, my lining didn't have an opening. I know in the pattern it tells you to leave an opening here. Well, I think most people have found that trying to get that neat when you sew it up is really hard. And if you make a little cut here, this is all going to be covered over by the credit card pocket and by the zipper pocket. So nobody will ever see that. You don't need to sew it closed. You don't need to do anything. Actually, with this bozal in there, it really holds it in place because I'm going to iron it and it's going to be stuck to the bozal, and it won't move after that. So I just kind of tuck it in through the hole at this point in time and work it so that it's all the way up to as close to the top as I can get it. And then I tuck the other end in down here and work that down and just work with it for a few minutes to get it flat, to get it in the position that you want. You can kind of see and feel where the edges are. If it's folded up and it's not laying flat, you can put your hand in there and you can get it flat. You can test it out to see if it's putting any bulk into this area here where you're going to sew, and it seems to me like it's in a really good position right now. One other thing that I do, and I found that on some of these that I hadn't used the bozal, this tends to roll a little bit up here in use, and so you can either put a piece of piece of the 809 Decor Bond in there to kind of give it a little bit more stability, which I might stick that in. But with the bozal, what I do is I pull this towards the center and then fuse it down. And then it kind of stays in place. I don't have as much of a problem. And then I do the same thing with this. Pull it. In fact, if you didn't have this bozal here, you could actually whip this closed and kind of overlap it a little bit. And then that pulls it all in so that you don't have any little extra bumps either here or here. And so I'm going to go ahead over to the iron and do that. Alright, I'm getting ready to sew my credit card slot pockets in. I didn't show you how to make this because this was on my other video, and there's nothing new about that. But when I'm sewing this in, I'm going to position my bungee cords right in here so that I can incorporate that into my seam as I sew this whole thing down. Okay, and as I'm sewing it down, what I want to do is I'll stay away from my buttonhole. I'll pull this over so that the buttonhole is cleared. I'm going to sew all the way down to just below the other buttonhole and stop. And then we'll finish the rest of the inside of the wallet. And my very last step is going to be to thread this bungee cord out of this buttonhole here, back into this buttonhole, and then incorporate it into the seam here as I finish this off and sew it up to here. It's pretty easy to get to it and sew it at that point, rather than having this scrunched up and having to deal with the fact that it's not laying flat while you're trying to put your zipper pocket in. So it works out pretty well, and that's what I'm going to be doing. Alright, here I go. My bungee cord is right under here, so I might give a little bit of a back stitch there. And I want to make sure that this is really pulled tight against the edge of the credit card slot. And I'm going to come down, I'm going to come right to where this is, and I'm going to stop. Okay, and let's check it on the back, make sure it's okay. Looks good. See, I missed hitting this slip pocket. And I didn't want to incorporate that bulk into my seam, so I made it a little bit narrower. I'll measure this in a minute and tell you how wide this is. I think it's about 7 inches wide. Okay, on to doing the other side. So I'm going to start down here, little back stitch, and work up to the flap part. All right, I'm ready for my final step now. So I have my bungee cord that was fastened in here, and I poked it out through my buttonhole on this side, and then I'm going to poke it back into my buttonhole down here. So they fit pretty tight, so you may have to have a little help with a pointy thing or scissors or something like that. So I'm going to pull that through as much as I can, and then I'm going to line it up with the buttonhole on the inside here and get ready to incorporate it into my seam and sew that down from the top down past the buttonhole, and I'll have my bungee cord fastened inside. So it looks kind of like this on the inside right now, and then I'll be able to pull that out and give it a little bit more room to stretch. I want this as flat as I can get it, and I could take the stretchy part and push it down away from the end here, which I think I will do, so that'll make it easier to sew it in flat. That's going to go right in here. A little bit tricky, but doable. And here I go. Okay, squish. Top stitch up here. And sew down to meet my stitching that I did partial stitching before. And there I go. And then this can pull out, and then that's as far as my wallet's going to fall open. Now if you think this is too wide, then you can go ahead and you can shorten that, and it won't be. So see, it's falling open that much on the side where I don't have the bungee attached, and here this just controls it. So I think it's you know, worthwhile trying, and especially if you make any of the bigger ones, it'd be a really good thing to have there. And when you squish it up, you can kind of tuck that in so you can't see it, and close up your wallet, and you're ready to go. There it is. Casino Royale bungee cord wallet.